to your point, your friend who's got some competitive advantage, that's where smart money goes. You don't go and, use a strategy that's kind of, for people that are just starting out at scale.
The last 3 years, I sold 14 properties, all in those lower socioeconomic house and land areas.
There you go. Yeah.
Trying to diversify into where I think the smart money is going.
Yeah. And it's more scalable, as you said. You can literally keep buying because the assets got much higher yielding. Like the higher the price point as well. This is one of the issues with resi is you spend more on residential, the yield drops because you've got less tenants that can afford to keep up with the rent of that waterfront house on, wherever you're talking about. Like you don't lease those properties. So the yields on those might be 1%.
Yeah, you're capped on those properties, right? Like if you have a property that's worth $5 million on the water, or you have a property that's worth $10 million, you're not getting that much more rent for the $10 million property, right? So it's a
So in a way,
strategy.
You're probably smart to rent that place, if you want to be flexible. And that's something we did for a while. Like we did the rent vesting thing because, again, I live on the spreadsheets. You put the net yield, like buying versus renting, like you're getting it at multiple times cheaper. And I felt like I was cheating. It was like a cheat code. We're renting on Bondi Beach overlooking icebergs for an absolute fraction of what the purchasing cost would be.
I know Carson wanted to touch base on this a little bit on the rent investing side of things.
Yeah, that's right. It's, we've got to do better than what you were talking about before, about what we've been taught. And you look at, if you're living in one of the capital cities and you can't afford to buy in your own backyard, it's being a bit smarter of, okay, well, where can we go to get your foot in the door? I mean, the thing that grinds my gears and the reason we've got yourself on here and the Kevin Dooney doing the rooming houses is you get the glossy brochure off the plan house and they're factoring in your 20% deposit. They're factoring in your depreciation just to try and make that number sexy of what your yield's going to be. And when you compare it to commercial, like you said, resi's got its place. And to get your foot in the door, we need to do that and go outside of our backyard if we can't afford to. But then the sooner we can leverage into smarter options, the better. So I guess that would, if on the way home, if you're sitting next to a 20-year-old kid and he says, "All right, that's great that you've done that if you're starting now." What do I do? Or you're talking to your son coming up. What's the game plan now in your eyes for someone that's cutting their teeth? They're only on, median wage. What are you doing now?
100% start residential, freehold land, hopefully. Like you can just buy a little house, doesn't have to be where you live. Exactly what I did, like just buy the house where in 20 years it might be rezoned or whatever. It doesn't really matter, but you cut your teeth. Like I like that word because you don't go into commercial and have to deal with how to deal with a cafe operator when he's behind his rent and what if the council knocks down because there's complaints because of the VAT smoke coming out. Like it's too much for a first-time investor. Go deal with a plain old simple house. The risk is low. Not much can go wrong. And you'll probably buy one or two more after that. So you buy a few resis, let that sort of sit in the market, do its thing over a 3 to 5 year period, and then get into commercial a lot earlier than most people think, because you don't need to be a multi-millionaire and be 20 years in the game to go into commercial. Like you can get in a lot earlier. I wish I got into it a lot earlier because the capital growth rates of my commercial properties have far exceeded most of my residential, especially the industrial. Like that's been going at, there's an interesting stat that I saw in I think it was a JLL report or Knight Frank. Over the last decade, the land values of industrial in Melbourne grew 281%, Sydney 280%, so 28% a year. That beats every residential market.
Why is that? Like from a macro point of view, is that last mile delivery warehouses? What is it?
Well, that was simply industrial land values. So
what's the end demand that's causing those blocks to go up?
Well, you're in the whole e-commerce boom, the changing marketplace where people are, so last mile logistics, to answer your question, there's a lot of businesses that need to store things, keep things cold, like cold storage is a massive growth industry at the moment. It's all sorts of things, like you've got retail selling out of these things too, like there's a lot of, look at we're in Southport here now, like there's warehouses that there's very few vacancies anywhere, like, especially ones that have good exposure. That's your showroom type one. Like you almost never see them vacant in a good area. Like the vacancy rate would be, sub 1% for good stuff out there.
What are some of the challenges, obviously with commercial? you need a bigger deposit.
Yep.
Yeah, your lending's a little bit different. What are some of the things that people need to be aware of before they jump into that space from resi over to commercial?